You're listening to Popcorn Unscripted,
the podcast where we dive into movies and TV shows with no scripts, no filters, just real talk and plenty of popcorn.
I'm Bailey.
And I'm Dylan.
We're here to talk about everything we love
And love to hate
in pop culture. So grab your popcorn,
sit back,
and let's get this show started. So let's go back, way back, to the 80s, where every group of kids either found an alien, fought off vampires, or went on a wild treasure hunt. The Goonies is the ultimate kid adventure movie, and rewatching it now, it's still an absolute blast. Welcome to episode 32. Now, this is a rewatch for me. I grew up watching this movie along with my family. My family had introduced to me this speak words. My family had introduced me to this movie, and this has always been a classic for me, much like The Karate Kid, much like the Back to the Future trilogy. Those were very much imprinted into who I am now, I guess you could say. To me, this is an absolute classic, and even watching it now, it still very much holds up to this day. As for the ratings for this movie, as of today, it has a 7.7 on IMDb out of 10. It has a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is actually kind of crazy. If you don't know, if you have never watched this movie, and if you haven't, what have you been doing your entire life for you not to watch it? Because this movie is an absolute classic to me. To me, it's an absolute classic, as I'm sure it is to everybody else. But if you haven't watched this movie, I'm going to try to give you the best description I can. So this movie is about a group of kids who are taking on a... What do you call it? It's a property developing firm, company, whatever have you. And so essentially, one of the main characters is about to lose their house because they're going to tear down, it's not just his house, but I think the whole neighborhood. They're going to tear down all of those houses and build a country club. But, no, it is just their house. It's just their house. They're going to tear down their house so they could build a country club there. And so this character was about to lose their house. So ultimately, these kids end up finding a treasure map up in one of the main character's attic. And lo and behold, these kids end up going on an adventure of a lifetime and finding a great treasure in hopes to save their house and not get it foreclosed, I guess you could say. It's such an interesting movie, such an amazing cast of characters. Like, let me tell you, like, the main cast list. So you have Sean Astin as Mikey. You have Josh Brolin, who played the older brother of Mikey. He's just recently in a new movie called Weapons, which I hope to get to go see this Saturday. And then you have Jeff Cohen, who played Chunk, and then Corey Feldman, who played Mouth, Kiwi Kwan, who played Data, which is actually one of his breakout roles other than Indiana Jones. And then you have Carrie Green, who played Andy, and then Martha Pimpleton, who played Steph. And then, of course, you had the other four adults who were kind of part of the main group that was going after the treasure, who played the Fratellis. You had Cho Pent... I can't pronounce his last name. I'm not even going to try it. You could look up the cast list if you want to. And then you have Robert Davi, and then Anne Ramsey, who played the bad guys, I guess you could say. And then you also have John Matuzak, who played the disfigured character Sloth. But yeah, this was like a great cast of people. I know this is where Sean, Josh, and Kiwi Kwan kind of got their start in this movie. And I also know that Josh was in The Outsiders too. Was Josh Brolin in The Outsiders? I know Sean ended up going to be in the Lord of the Rings movies. And then, of course, if you don't know who Josh Brolin is, he's also played Cable in Deadpool, and he was also the guy that played Thanos in the Avengers movies. So, you also have that. But yeah, so this movie is an accumulation of so many great things. So, let's just dive right into this. So, in the beginning of the movie, we actually kind of go through an introduction of all of the characters, because the movie starts out with a classic police chase, which ultimately ends up showing all of the characters, which I thought was actually pretty neat, because none of the kids were paying attention to the police chase. So the three bad guys, what did I call them? Crap. The Fratellis. I'm gonna keep forgetting that, by the way. But you have the Fratellis trying to escape the cops, and as they are going through this chase, they go past the two girls, Andy and Steph. And then you have it go by Data, and you have it go by Mouth. Well, actually, first it's Mouth that we're introduced to. He's helping his father fix the sink. And then you go past Data, I think. It's not in particularly in this order, but you are introduced to each character individually until you get to Mikey and Brandon. So I absolutely enjoy the setup there. Because then it's after that police chase where all of the characters start to come together, and you get to see what all of these characters are like. And they actually call themselves the Goonies, hence why it's called the Goonies, because that's what they called them. And I remember Mikey kind of referencing the Hardy Boys. So I guess that's kind of where I don't know where the name the Goonies really came from, like where they came up with that name, the Goonies, but the Hardy Boys is referenced, and the Hardy Boys is kind of a similar setup to the Goonies, but I don't think the Hardy Boys has ever been adapted into TV or film, other than to be like a source material for these types of movies and TV shows. But it does. It gets the energy going, like, right from the start. Like, you're introduced to the issues with them foreclosing Mikey and Brandon's house. You hear about the troubles that their dad has, and, and all that kind of stuff. And so you're introduced to all of that, and the reason why they're trying to figure out how to stop it is really the big thing here. And these boys are just absolutely silly. These boys are just silly and loud and so full of heart. You have Chunk, which is like the clumsy one of the three, and then you have Mouth, which is kind of like I guess you could say kind of like the bad boy of them all. He kind of has like an attitude, sort of thing. And then you have Data, who's like the brainiac. He has all the gadgets and gizmos and things like that. And then you have Mikey, that's kind of like the leader. He's kind of like the one that's trying to lead them to the end game, which is actually pretty interesting. And so as time goes on, you then getting towards the middle of the movie. This is where everything starts to pick up. So the four boys end up going to this house, and they discover the three Fratellis, and in that house, they end up going inside while the Fratellis is inside, and the mother ends up offering them water and things like that. So Mikey ends up asking to go use the bathroom. And ultimately she lets him. He goes down. He's looking for the way to get into the tunnels that he sees on the map that was found in the attic. And so he goes down there, and that's when he discovers which character was it? He discovers Jake down there, which is this like the Spanish speaking one of the three. Trying to feed Sloth. And so ultimately Mikey, he discovers Sloth, and it's an interesting thing. But one thing I didn't really understand is, how did Sloth become that way, if he did become that way, or was he born that way? I don't really think the movie goes into much detail about that, but I'm just curious if he was born that way or if he had become that way somehow. Honestly, with the way that his brain works, I would assume he had some birth defects. Maybe not plural, but I know he probably had a few birth issues. Which makes sense since the other three are so messed up. And not only, well, no, because she does mention that she does drop him several times, as she did drop him several times as a baby, which could lead to but I don't think that would be why that side of his face is all droopy and he looks like an alien. I don't really think that would be caused to do that. Now, as for brain damage, that would be a whole other thing. That would be a whole other thing. Her dropping him so many times that he ends up having brain damage, I could see that. But as for his face, I'm not exactly sure what happened with that. But I will say Sloth is a very, very interesting character. He is for sure the gentle giant of the movie. I will say that. He's great. So you have like the underground tunnels, and then of course later on you have the piano made of bones, which I think is probably the most like climactic puzzle that they have to get through in order to get to the treasure. Because you only had four attempts to get the chords right. You only had a few attempts to get the chords right. So she gets the first one right, right on it. And then she gets the second and third one wrong. She gets the fourth one right, and then she gets the third one right, I think. And then they're able to go through and continue forward. But it's all very interesting. And then of course you have the stuff that happens with Chunk and Sloth, and as well as the Fratellis, because Chunk ends up getting left behind, and he ends up telling them everything. Like when he said everything, Chunk literally told him everything about his life, even though that's not what they meant. But he did as he was told. You can't blame Chunk for that. But Chunk did end up telling them everything. And so that's when they found out about the treasure, and that's when they end up going after the kids. Which, of course, how Chunk met Sloth is the Fratellis end up locking him in there with Sloth, and they just became friendships. Because honestly, if you think about it, Chunk and Sloth are kind of on the same level, I guess you could say. Because, which of course Chunk is a little more so, but I think Chunk really understood Sloth more than even Sloth's own family did. And Chunk was Chunk is such an adorable character. I will say, Chunk, even though he is the clumsy one of the group, of the four, he's definitely an interesting character he was certainly an interesting character, which I also thought it was cool how all of the traps were done. I think Data does an interesting job with the gadgets that he has, and how they weren't ruined beforehand kind of puzzles me in a sense. Because it's how did these things not get damaged with them running around everywhere and stuff? So that just kind of, the slick shoes, and then he has the claw that he was able to, propel himself so he wouldn't land on the spikes. And then he also had the one with, the boxing glove where he was able to shoot it out and punch the guy. And Yeah, yeah. I think Data is actually a really cool character too because of his intellect and the way he builds his gadgets and stuff is very interesting. And then, of course, you had Mouth, which did play an integral part because he was the only one that could speak Spanish, which I also found interesting. That makes me wonder, like, how old Mouth is, because how does he know Spanish so much? Like, I actually don't know, how he's so, like, is that explained? Did I miss that? Did I miss how that was explained? That how he was able to speak fluent Spanish? I don't remember. But yeah, so that was his thing. And also, since the map had Spanish on it, he was the translator of the map, and so on and so forth. So he did play an interesting part in this. And then, of course, you had Mikey, who was kind of the leader. He was kind of keeping the morale up. And then, of course, Brandon and the two girls were just I think they were just kind of there just to be there. They didn't really play an integral part of it. Really, the four boys were kind of the masterminds behind it all. Although I will say Andy is the one that played the bone piano there at that part. But as for Brandon and Steph, they didn't really play a part in trying to find the treasure, other than to just be there and kind of help when needed. As far as I remember, and as far as I'm concerned, that's just how that was. And then we get to the ending, and you get the pirate ship reveal. Like, they had finally made it. They finally found One-Eyed Willie's treasure. It even still hits to this day when they find it. It's just like, yeah, they found it. It's amazing. And I don't really know how else to explain it, but it's just uplifting. It's like, yes, the characters finally got there. It's like, and it's that way throughout the whole movie. It's like keeps you on your toes. It keeps you going, and then it finally happens. And they get there, and you get the emotional payoff from it, and he finally gets what he's always wanted. And of course, by the time they find all of the treasure and everything, Mikey was smart not to take from the bowl plate thing, or I guess you could, or it was a scale. He knew not to take from the scale because that was Willie's portion. Just don't he said, just don't take from the scale. That's Willie's. Take anything else but that. Because I think he knew that was possibly booby trapped. And so that's just, that was really cool. It's almost like he had, that connection with Willie or something. I don't really know. And then, of course, the Fratellis find them. And they all get caught and tied up and stuff, and they start getting thrown overboard. And then, of course, you have Chunk and Sloth come to save the day, and it's a very, very cool moment to watch, because you have Sloth, who's this, very not very smart character, be this brave person to save these people, and it shows that he was such a bigger person than what his family was, and it was great. It's always good to have a character like that, in my opinion. It's absolutely incredible. And I also liked how he had the Superman shirt, because the Superman shirt is also a symbol of hope, and that's what, that there's also that connection as well. And I will say that since, on the ship, when they got caught, they ended up having to give up all of the treasure that they had gathered. All the treasure that they had in their pockets, pretty much everything. But the one thing they forget is Mikey's marble bag. So Mikey ended up dumping all of his marbles out so he could fit gems inside of his marble bag. But the Fratellis did not check for that. So, and of course, the characters end up forgetting about that. And then once all of the characters finally escape out of a little tunnel that was there, all of them get out, and they find each other, and they find their parents, they find the two cops, they find everybody, and ultimately, Mikey's dad was about to sign the contract where they were going to foreclose his house and stuff, and the cleaning lady from the beginning that Mikey's mom had hired to help clean and pack up the house ultimately finds Mikey's little bag in his jacket. She ended up finding it in his jacket, and she tells him, don't sign, in, of course, Spanish. She says, don't sign, and she shows them the bag of gems, which ends up saving Mikey's house and saving them from foreclosing the house, which is really, really cool moment. And, you know, it shows that miracles can happen. You might go through some of the hardest times of your life, but in the end, you're gonna come out okay. Like, I mean, you're gonna be okay regardless of the things that happen. And you might struggle for a little while. But you will always come out on top. And that's one thing that I take from this, that I'm taking from this movie. But at its core, it's mostly about growing up. It's about friendship and the last wild spark of childhood before reality kicks in. And like half the time, I feel like I am like a kid adult, like a mix between a kid and an adult half the time. Because in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to grow up. Why would you want to grow up? Why, like, that's just so terrible. Adulting is terrible, guys. Adulting is so terrible. I absolutely do not like it. But ultimately, it's something you have to face. But it doesn't mean you cannot have... That doesn't mean you have to get rid of your childish charm. It doesn't mean you have to tuck that little kid away in the back of your mind and just leave it there. Don't ever abandon that side of yourself, because to me that's an important side, is to let loose and have fun. Don't be a stickler or anything of that nature. That's just what I'm taking from it. But not only that, but you also have, in this movie, you also have the theme of, like, losing your home, like, losing your sense of comfort, losing your place. You're losing your place. And then, of course, it's you versus that against trying to find out who you are. So, I guess you could say, like, it's kind of like when you graduate high school. You graduate high school and you're leaving everything you knew. You're leaving all of your friends behind. You might keep a few of them. You might keep in touch with a few of them. And you graduate there, and then you're shoved out into the real world, and now you're having to figure out this big world that you had no idea what was out there. Even though that the people beforehand tried to prepare you for such a time, nothing can ever prepare you for the real world. And in which, of course, I graduated in 2018, and I went to college for 2 years, and it was just like, it was a reality check. It was like mind-blowing how much like darkness and lightness were in this world. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me. And it certainly changed me. Whether it was for the good or for the bad, I don't know yet. I'm still figuring life out. I'm still figuring all this out myself. And it's just, yeah. And then, of course, you have this big family dynamic between all of the characters, which, of course, at first, I don't think all of them really wanted to be together. but by the end of it, they had went through all of this trouble together that it literally formed a bond that I don't think could ever be broken. And I actually wonder if that's the way it was when they were filming this movie as well. If they all became like a family. I wonder if all of them stay in touch. I actually think they had a reunion. Did they not? Did they not have a reunion on a red carpet here lately? I want to say they did, but I don't remember. I don't remember. I think they did. I'm pretty sure they did. So, some of my favorite moments, I don't know. One of my favorite moments, I think, is when Chunk breaks Mikey and Brandon's mom's statue, and the extremities got broken off. I think that's a funny one, and then they ended up gluing that upside down, and they thought the mom was gonna notice, but that ultimately didn't happen. And also, I like how Mouth translated to the cleaning lady, for Mikey's mom to like, kind of like tell her everything, and he ended up making up this whole story. It was just pretty funny. Let's see, I'm trying to think. And then, of course, I like the scene where Chunk and Sloth show up, and then, of course, Sloth does the thing that he saw in that show that he was watching, where he slides down the sail with a knife in the sail, and he ends up sliding down it like the pirate did in the show. I think that was a good attention to detail. I also like the moment where Chunk gets stuck in the freezer with the dead body. That's another funny moment for me. Another good moment is when Andy mistakes Mikey for Brandon, and she was like, "Wait a minute, but doesn't Brandon have braces? Like, what happened there?" But that was pretty funny. And then, of course, you have every booby trap that was in. I especially love the bone organ, or the bone piano, or whatever you want to call it. I think that was an interesting puzzle to solve. I could see that being very difficult if you did not have a thing for music. Because if you had no idea what the chords were and you were just pressing random things, you would be dead. Like, in an instant. You would be dead. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, if the Fratellis were to have found that before the kids, all of them would be dead. And it would have not ended well. For them. So, every kid has their thing, their niche, and every kid had brought their A game. Of course, all of these actors and actresses did an amazing job in this movie. Of course, I knew some of them. Of course, Sean Astin, he was in Lord of the Rings, as I've said before. Then I knew Josh Brolin from playing Thanos and Cable from Deadpool. And then, of course, I knew Kiwi Kwan from Indiana Jones. Which, of course, I mostly knew him from this movie. And stuff. So, every single actor and actress in this movie did an absolutely amazing job with their characters, and the flow of this story is unprecedented. It's absolutely incredible the way the story flows and how everything happens, how the characters react. It's all incredible. And I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, what if they were to make a modern day version of this movie? Like, what would be changed? I honestly don't know what would be changed. I know I would think that, of course, there would be better technology. I think Data would have, like, better gadgets for sure. I think he would have a better I think a modern day Data would have a better understanding of gadgets and technology. So he would have the better stuff. As for, which of course the other three I don't think would change much. Really, Data, I think, would be the one that would changes a lot more because of the technology that's now out there. I think he would have a lot more to work with than in 1985. Let's see. As for the Fratellis, I don't think they would change very much. I don't think I would change Sloth. I think I would probably change the booby traps up a little bit. I think that's what I would do. I would kind of make them like more modernized booby traps. Well, actually, no, not more modernized, because these would still be pirates, of course, like old pirates. So I might just kind of like do better pirate booby traps. I would probably take some pages from Uncharted, the video game series Uncharted. I would probably take a look at those, and then of course I would take a look at the Tomb Raider series and see what kind of booby traps they come up with. Especially the Uncharted 4 game, where they actually are dealing with a pirate. I think I would take a few pages from that game, and try to recreate some of those booby traps, maybe, because I genuinely think that would be really, really cool. Let's see. So there are a lot of 80s movies that I have grown up watching. Because you have E.T., The Sandlot. But in the 80s, Kid Gang Goes on an Adventure genre is one of the top tiers. Fun fact, I have not watched Stranger Things or It or Super 8. Actually, no, I think I have watched It, but maybe bits and pieces. But I think E.T. is a good one to compare it to. E.T. is certainly a good one. The Sandlot is a good one to compare this to. The Sandlot was a big one when I was growing up as well. Although I don't think I've watched it all the way through. If I have, I don't remember it. I don't remember it at all. But I know the one thing, and I'm pretty sure this is from The Sandlot, the one thing that I say a lot is, "You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me, Smalls." I think that's from The Sandlot, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this genre of movies is definitely a big thing. I don't know if you could compare it to Harry Potter or not, because it's just 3. I don't know. But Kid Adventures, I think we should go back and look at some of these, like, for example, the Hardy Boys, and then of course you have like a bunch of like children detectives out there, I think. Like the Hardy Boys. I mean, honestly, I think a modern day Goonies would be pretty cool. I'm actually sitting here thinking about it. I genuinely think it would be really cool to do a modern day Goonies if you really wanted to. Or maybe even not do the Goonies, but to make another movie like the Goonies or The Sandlot or E.T. I think that would be a really cool thing to see, especially nowadays when everything is just out of whack, to say the least. I think it would be a cool cool thing to go see in the theaters and to just have fun with, and to not overthink it, and it just be one of those simple movies that anybody can enjoy, and you can just have fun. So I actually have a fun fact here. So apparently the pirate ship that they end up finding at the end was a fully built pirate ship. That was a fully built pirate ship set. I did not know this until I looked it up, but it was fully built, and it was not shown to the cast until they were filming those scenes, which I think is pretty cool. Which, that just goes to show you how practical effects work, and how amazing practical effects are. Like, yes, we have access to technology, yes, we have access to CGI, but here's the thing. AI can't do what we can do with our hands. And I'm going to reference Fantastic Four here, because the Thing looked absolutely amazing. Like, even, like, they did, like, a whole practical suit as well. They did a whole practical suit for the Thing as well, which was absolutely incredible. and it was just absolutely amazing. And then of course they built all of the sets in New York, this retro futuristic 60s New York. They built all of those backlot set. They built all of that. And then of course I'm going to reference The Last of Us as well, because if you look at how the clickers look, all of that's practical. None of that's like, they would probably go in with CGI, maybe touch it up a little bit, but other than that, it's mostly practical effects makeup, and it's so amazing. Like, that's just 2 examples of practical effects that you can get with your own hands. Honestly, I think movie studios should go back to putting more budget into practical effects than CGI, because honestly, I think that's where most studios run up their budget, is with doing CGI, because it is a lot of work and it's very particular, very meticulous, whereas if you were to do it practical, you would be able to get it the way you want it the first time and not have to go in and re-edit and do all of the things that you would have to do if it was all CGI. And so I will always adore practical effects. Like even Galactus was mostly practical as well. We actually got to see his suit, like, a few weeks ago? We got to see him in his suit, which was really, really cool to see. But, to kind of start to wrap things up. So The Goonies is one of those movies that just kind of sticks with you, whether you grew up watching it or you're just now discovering it. Please go watch it if you're just now discovering it. Please go watch it. I cannot stress this enough. It is such a great movie. You're gonna have a blast with it. Like, you're gonna adore this movie as much as everybody else does. I promise. And if you don't, something's wrong with you. But it taps into that what if wonder we all had as kids. Now, as for me, I know I had a pretty decent imagination as a child. I still do. Like, I come up with, like, one-off characters all the time. Like, I always think of these one-off characters. Sometimes I write them down, sometimes I don't, but that's the one thing I like coming up with about storytelling. I like to come up with the characters, not necessarily the story, because if I were to try to come up with a story, I wouldn't know where to start, and I wouldn't know where to end. I would know the middle parts, but not the beginning or end. And but I do adore creating characters and making characters. As story writing goes, that's kind of a difficult thing for me to do. But if you found a treasure map in your attic today, would you follow it, or just Google the backstory and go to bed? That's my question for you guys. My answer, I don't know. It would depend on if I had the money to follow it. I guess if I were to find a treasure map these days, because you have to think, like, with all of these modern like treasure hunting movies, you have these treasure hunters, like, flying different countries and stuff. You're having them stay in these hotels. Like, you have to figure all of that out if you were to travel. If you were to find a treasure map and try to find a treasure, you would be definitely spending some money, to say the least. But yeah, so one final announcement. So in my link tree, which is linked below, you will find at the very top there is a thing called Buy Me a Coffee. So if you ever wanted to support the show financially, you can always donate there, or you can go donate through our Buzzsprout website as well. I just think Buy Me a Coffee is probably a little bit easier for some people, so that's also an option there. But even with you guys just listening and sharing the episodes is plenty of support enough for me. I am very fortunate to be able to be sitting here and doing these episodes and being able to review movies from the past, the present, and so on and so forth. It's certainly interesting, and so far, over the last over the last several episodes we've done, I've certainly enjoyed watching movies I've never watched before, and watching movies I never thought I would ever watch and enjoy. A good examples would be Materialists and Eddington, but of course, everybody knows why I went and watched those movies. I think we know the reason why everybody went and watched those movies, but I digress. And, of course, with my Tales from the Crypt episode, that was the last episode that was posted. I had never heard of that show before in my life. I have never seen anything about it, and so it was an entirely new experience for me, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was an absolute blast to have Alan on for that episode. Also, if you haven't listened to it, I highly suggest you go listen to it. It's an amazing, amazing episode. I know it's long, but give it a chance. It's an amazing episode. Everybody can get something out of that episode, regardless of if you heard the show or not. Heard of the show or heard of the movies or not. You will get something out of it regardless, if you know anything about it or not. But, yeah. That's all for today's episode of Popcorn Unscripted.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at PopUnscripted, then Popcorn Cinema on Facebook.
And let us know your thoughts or any suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. We upload every Wednesday and Saturday.
If you'd like to send us a message or subscribe for bonus content, check out the links in the description.
Your support means a lot and helps keep the conversation going.
If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave us a review. It helps us out a ton, and we love hearing your thoughts.
Until next time, keep your popcorn close
and your movie critiques closer.
Thanks for listening to Popcorn Unscripted.